Stonehenge is one of those places that you see highlighted on such great documentary television as Ancient Aliens. And it's there for a reason. Again, it is a bit mysterious, but we will dig into it here. So first of all, it's a henge. So in other words, it's a megalithic circle of stones, although you can have a wood circle as well, typically surrounded by some form of ditch, which we do see at Stonehenge. And it's built in many stages, not just the stone part that you think of in the center, built over 1,000 years or so, but a much larger structure that we see expanding beyond it. And the stones themselves aren't simply stacked. In fact, what you see is this idea of mortise and tenon and lintel construction. So these stones were put into place with sort of this interconnectedness, much more like Legos than simply blocks of wood stood in place. The stones are sandstone and volcanic rock, which people argue over where they came from, probably within 20 to 40 miles, give or take. Probably floated to the site, not mysteriously by Merlin or aliens, but rather just attached to enough wood to get it to float down a river and then somehow transported from there to the site. Ancient peoples are ingenious. They can find ways of doing things, no different than today. And there's been several people on YouTube who have actually posted videos of how you could do this with the technology that they had. So I'm not going to worry about that too much here. Scholars have estimated that it may have taken 1,100 men about 5.5 years to build the stone circle in the middle, much less the rest of it, which again is built over a period of time. And just so you're aware, this has nothing to do with the Druids, because the Druids didn't exist when this was built. They come much later, by 1,000 years or more. So not really a Druid structure. The context, of course, remains shrouded, but we do know something about its function. It lines up surprisingly well with a number of sunrises, sunsets, moonrises, etc. It leads most to believe that it's probably a calendar of some form. Now, why would ancient people spend time looking at stars and building a calendar? Well, think about it this way. If you're an ancient man and you're a farmer, you need to know when the spring equinox is, when it's safe to plant. I mean, after all, even this year, 2024, when I'm recording this, we had an unusually mild winter. We had 50 degrees the first week of January. This middle 2 weeks, we had the snowpocalypse, and then we had polar vortex. And then after that, everything got mild again. We were in the 30s, 40s, 50s. You could have easily, as ancient farmers, sat there and looked at that and gone in middle of February or March and gone, hey, it's been warm for a week or two. Let's go ahead and plant. But if you did, you'd probably die. Your family would probably die. So knowing the date is going to be important, because you need to know, is this real spring or is this false spring? What's going on? In fact, that's part of why we have religious festivals when we do, often around those major time periods in the calendar, near the summer equinox or summer solstice, winter solstice, and the equinoxes. Look at it this way. Christmas is the winter solstice. Easter is the spring equinox. Halloween, roughly the fall equinox. Harvest festivals in general. And we tend to see summer festivals in just about every society. So it's really no different. So it would allow for summer and winter moon and sun observations. It would allow you to know quite predictably what the date is. And how do they do this? How do they lay this all out? Again, a stick and some rocks. There aren't incredible calculations going in. It's probably built, especially being built over 1,000 years or more. A lot of it is trial and error, observation. Hey, if we adjust this, if we move this, we can do something better. And by the time you get to the stone circle in the middle, very late in the construction of Stonehenge, you get something that is well, highly accurate. And so we have things like the heel stone, there's a representation of it, obviously, where the sunrise happens directly over the heel stone on the summer solstice, giving us that very exact date. It's a little to the side on the dates on either side of it. And of course, this is important to Neolithic farmers who need to know when they should be planting, when they should be harvesting, if conditions are off and how they need to adjust. So most likely, it's ultimately a calendar, even more important than ours today, that allows for these ancient farmers, this agricultural society, to know what they should be looking for, to know when the weather is nothing more than an aberration. Now, not only is it a calendar, but we see something else. We see burials. I should point out, these burials are not from the time period when it's built. In fact, they're much later. We have Roman burials and other groups being buried there. Why? Because they would have believed, coming across this 2,000 years later, so we're dealing with, say, 1000 BCE, 500 BCE. These ancient peoples would have looked at it and gone, wow, who could have possibly built that? And their answer almost invariably would have been the gods. And where do you want to be buried? Well, I want to be buried, or most people want to be buried near their gods, near their holy sites. We see it even today. And so it's not really surprising that later peoples will bury figures there. But keep in mind that no one is buried there from the period in which it's built. So it is not a burial area. There are several other interesting ideas about what Stonehenge was for. People argue about the acoustics and everything else. At the end of the day, it's a calendar. We don't see a lot of evidence of burials, etc., from the period. We don't see evidence of other uses for it. We don't see human sacrifice. It's possible, but we don't see any evidence of that. We would typically expect to see a burial ground right nearby from the period, and we just don't. So it is very enigmatic. It's the sort of thing you could write an entire final project paper on or do a final project on and never run out of material. There are numerous books written on it, and is definitely captures the enigmatic nature of prehistoric art and architecture.